on this episode of Disruptive Discussions.
We were like, should we just send it right now? And just go, like, this was like, we were legitimately considering this. Like, yep.
And the instance you have that choice, your right to healthy life is no longer my responsibility.
We took our first real trip as friends, and we kind of developed our own philosophy of traveling.
I was appalled, quite frankly, that they did this. Okay, so Spalding, tell me about this Darknet Diaries podcast you were
All right.
to.
Shout out to Jack Reciter and the Darknet Diaries podcast. That is one of my favorites. And I there might be some things that I missed, but the gist of it was...
We're getting right into it today.
We're getting right into it. So the other day, I was thinking about traveling, and I was also listening to this podcast. And this podcast, this Darknet Diaries episode, featured a hacker of some sort, but this wasn't about his hacking. It was more about his traveling and some of the tools that he took to travel and how he did that. And so what this was, what was interesting is the episode kind of went over how you travel cheaper on airfare than you would normally. Normally when people think about flying, they just kind of purchase the ticket and that's that. But for this particular guy, he found out how to work with, I guess, the air miles and the points. And without flying a bunch of miles to get points, I think he opened a bunch of different credit cards and he found some backdoor approaches to fly first class to Namibia for $22.
Oh my gosh.
And so...
Isn't Namibia... What did you say? What
Namibia.
Namibia.
It's just north of South Africa.
Okay.
So
it's not like a... It's
not like a big place.
It's not like a big place.
But a super cool tourist destination. Way cool to go see.
Oh, nice.
Really nice beaches, that kind of thing. But he flew to this kind of off the beaten path place for $22 because he found out how to game the system. Kind of like extreme couponing, I guess.
That is epic.
Yeah, at its finest.
Credit cards.
Made me think about how much fun that would be to go on a trip just to somewhere kind of exotic on a college budget. And I think it's possible if you know what you're doing. So
I think it is too. But I don't, so what was the, well, I'm curious what the gist of that episode was, because it's has to do with hacking and stuff. So what was the hack?
I didn't listen to the whole thing.
Oh,
that makes me kind of sad. But they went pretty, because I had to leave. I was at work.
Yeah.
But I think the essence of it was that it wasn't so much hacking as it was finding non-conventional approaches to conventional things.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Jack used the example that he talked about when he was in college, and he talked to some guy that was renting a textbook, but instead of renting the textbook, he just checked it out from the library and didn't return it because the fees for a late library book were less than the fees to rent a textbook. And so he used that as an option. Yeah, he used that to kind of illustrate that hacking is kind of a mindset that you have to have of taking a non-conventional approach to get what you need. And that's they kind of brought it over to airfare, or flying, where they said, you might fly in a non-conventional way, but that doesn't mean it's immoral or wrong. It's just non-conventional, and then you save a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's epic. I want to do that so bad.
We should do that, at some point.
Fly to Namibia.
Yeah.
Or Sierra Leone. We could go to Sierra Leone. And
yeah, I'm going to put a plug in for Sierra Leone. I'm not mentally ready for that trip yet. I got to make some plans, but...
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. I did not expect you to say that. I thought it was going to be he hacked into the plane's Wi-Fi system or something.
Oh, no. I wouldn't suggest us doing that, yeah.
No, well, no. I was that's why I was wondering what the gist of the episode was.
Yeah,
that's usually what you would expect that podcast to come up with. So
it's what were those 747 Max planes or whatever that were if that was the first one, that'd be bad.
Ooh.
Anyway,
what really happened to the lost episode of Darknet Diaries?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not good.
Turns out that's what happened. Oh my gosh. No, I like that approach though, because those types of approaches are fun because it's you're like you almost have like the feeling and the thrill of like, man, I figured this loophole out. It's completely legitimate. And
Yep.
it shouldn't be happening, but it is. It's awesome.
Yep, that's how I felt. I used paid time off for the first time today, and that's not even a loophole. That's an actual thing. I felt bad about it though. I was like, I'm not working, but I'm getting paid. It's like, arrest me.
Dude, that's a mood. I've been watching it stack up in my account for a year, and I'm just looking at like this ridiculously large number going, I have never used this before.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
I've got like 44 hours worth.
Yeah, it's a cool thing.
Jeez.
I guess people use it. People do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I never use it except for this weekend. So that's the only time.
Got to splurge a little.
But in talking about this, like about traveling and these kind of things, like it just reminded me of our trip and how much fun that was. And for listeners, Nick, Kaden, and I have been hanging out as friends for a long time.
A good long time.
Yeah, I mean, I met Kaden in 6th grade.
Mr. Sanchez's class.
Mr. Sanchez's PE class, and then I met Nick in 8th grade.
Probably 8th. That seems right.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I remember we'd play chess in the library.
Yes,
so-
sir.
Oh yeah.
Every morning, every lunchtime, you know.
Every lunchtime. It was so awesome. It was like the thing to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
But in this regard, like we took our first real like trip as friends last year, and we kind of developed our own philosophy of like traveling, and we just kind of flew by the seat of our pants. And we just, like, drove down to like St. George. We went down to Vegas. We went down to Death Valley. It was sick. And so, just thinking about that as things are getting warmer, we've kind of like thought about the best ways to travel and how to like really utilize that time the best. It's a good time.
My favorite is if you had to describe that trip, that is exactly the phrase I would use, is flying by the seat of our pants. Because we only had, I think the only thing we had really planned out was like we were staying in the Pyramid in Las Vegas. That was like literally, I think the only thing
I think we booked
planned
it
out.
as we were on our way down, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we did actually, because let's see, you were driving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember passing by, I think it was about the Provo area. We'd kind of finished up some discussions and whatnot, and then
Yeah.
we were like, okay, maybe we should find somewhere to stay. So as we're driving down, where we've still got a good cell service before we hit too far down south, we just, okay, let's see which hotels have open rooms.
Yeah.
It's a weeknight. It was easy to get a hold of one.
Yeah.
For pretty cheap.
It was epic.
I love it. It's a very laissez-faire approach. It's
Literally
just,
flying by the seat of our pants. Well, we could do that too because there's only 3 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
You
is
gotta
what-
train.
Yeah. That is what the funnest part about that trip was it was literally, we just did whatever we felt like doing. Like, hey, we woke up the next morning and we wanted to drive to Death Valley. Okay. Like we just did it, you know?
We've never been there. It's just the middle of absolutely nowhere. But
Yeah.
we just kind of went. My favorite part of that day, it was like 4:00 p.m. So it's March. So I mean, it gets dark-ish, after a little while. And I remember it was 4:00 p.m. and we're just at the sand dunes, and we were waiting on Nick's callback for his internship and stuff. We were like excited to see if he would get that internship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. But it was great because we were just in the middle of Death Valley, and we were, I think it was 2 hours out of Los Angeles, or 4 hours, something like that.
It was like 4 hours. It
Okay,
was like, it wasn't close, but it wasn't far.
Yeah, it seems like we were pretty much like in between LA and Las Vegas.
It was
Yeah.
it was as far to get there as it was back to Vegas.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we were trying to decide, do we go
Do we full
to Las
send?
Vegas or do we go to Los Angeles? And we didn't even know. Like we had nowhere to stay. We were just like, are we going to stay here or are we going to go there?
We were like, should we just send it right now and just go? Like this was like we were legitimately considering this. Like, should we do this? Like,
And we've never been to LA before. Like none of us have really like spent. I think we've been to Disneyland. A few of us have. You two have been to Disneyland, right?
yeah,
Yep.
I've been to Anaheim.
But
I've
never,
flown into LA.
Okay, so you've flown into LA, but never like walked the streets or tried to find a hotel there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was.
Yeah, we were kind of looking out. We were like, all right, well, if we do that, that's going to be a heck of a drive back. Because then we were thinking at one point, I don't know how seriously we consider this, actually driving up the California coast
Yeah.
back home.
Yeah, taking the northern route home. That was in consideration at the same time.
Go up through San Francisco.
Because we had the next 2 days to do it if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, we decided that was just more driving than we probably should do in one trip.
It was like a Friday that we were deciding all this, and we had to be back by Sunday.
Yeah, we had Saturday, Sunday to get home, but
Well, that was like the reason like I was almost hesitant to do that wasn't because of all the driving. It was because I'm like, that's a crap load of miles on my car. You know? I was like, we've already put a crap load on. I'm like, if we do that, goodness gracious. Like, you know, it was just like, I can't fathom that much. It was just hilarious. I was like, man, like that's ridiculous. If we can't go too crazy like this. And in hindsight, I kind of almost wish we would have, because then the week after, bam, the coronavirus was like, shut everything down.
it was literally that week. We got back into like that Tuesday, Wednesday after we got back. That's when everyone just started getting all nuts about it.
Yeah.
We were just on the verge of the whole thing. It was kind of,
Well, like I remember it was the first week of March that we left. So it was the first week of March 2020. And I still remember that the morning we woke up in Las Vegas, I remember going to the store. And like there, remember there was the run on
on water
and like toilet paper.
Yeah,
and
yes.
So it wasn't like COVID wasn't a thing, but it was a wave that we knew was going to come, but it just hadn't yet. So churches were still open. You didn't have to wear masks yet. It was still like everything was still going, but it was literally like the last week that was the case.
Everyone, we were just at the tipping point. Everyone was a little bit getting on edge.
Yeah, like 1 month from that point, like people were afraid to go outside.
Dude,
it was just donezo. You could not go eat anywhere. It was just bad. So it was good timing on our part.
I remember that. Yeah, we walked into that Walmart and we were looking, because that was the day we were going to Death Valley.
That's right, because all those racks were empty, and we were like,
yeah,
man, we just want a case of water when we go out to the desert.
Yeah, we're going out to the desert. We're like, we should probably have like a good water supply, because, you know, anything can happen in the desert. It's Death Valley. So we go to Walmart and like all of the water bottles are gone. Like all of them. We're just kind of like standing there in this random Walmart in Las Vegas, like, what the crap, people? What's the big deal?
It wasn't a huge thing in the news yet. Yeah. We hadn't seen this at home yet. And then that was crazy.
Yeah.
And now the world has adjusted. I mean, I think for me, I'm probably going to forget just how intense that was when everything shut down.
Yeah.
Because like now, like the world is kind of used to like, all right, yeah, you know, wear your mask and whatnot. But like, we're not afraid of not having soap at the grocery store. But like back in those times, it was literally like, I cannot purchase toilet paper. Like it is beyond the power of my ability to purchase toilet paper.
Dude, that I do not understand the big deal behind toilet paper. Like, why was toilet paper the thing that everyone went all in on? Like,
you can survive without toilet paper.
Yeah.
You might not think you can, but I guarantee that you can. Now, food and water are a different story here.
Yeah.
I feel like you have some experiences that...
Nothing in particular. I mean, in West Africa, toilet paper is hard to come by. People don't really use it. It's it's a luxury. So
do what you got to do.
What you got to do.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's just like it was just so random that it was the run on toilet paper that happened. I'm like everything else, like it was hard to find other things, but like the toilet paper thing, like what the heck, people, calm down.
I guess that's a recurring thing that people do. Around, I don't know what natural disaster we had before that. I can't remember what it was, but people do that. And cases of water are almost always one of the first things to go.
Cases of water makes sense though, because like it
kind of makes sense, except for the fact that it'll last you all of. I mean, what a case of 30, 40 some odd bottles. If you got a family, that's going to last you all of a day and a half.
Yeah.
That's like it.
But
you're not buying much time at all with something like that. But it still
makes more sense than toilet paper.
Yeah, sure.
The toilet paper thing, I just didn't get. Yeah, that was a crazy week. Because like literally like a year ago, well, a little over a year ago, I guess. Like if you wore a mask inside of Walmart, you'd be like, what the heck? Like, why is this person wearing a mask? Like, it'd be kind of weird. Now, if you're like not wearing a mask, It's like, what the heck? That's kind of
Well,
interesting.
yeah. And sometimes I'll even get like, it's weird. I'll get like a little bit of anxiety watching movies where people aren't wearing masks. And so, like in my mind, I'll,
What?
Well, it's
No
not
way.
like, it's not like I'm like super anxious, but like my mind will just go to like, you guys, like you have to wear masks. And then it's like, no, you don't. Actually,
It's a movie.
The,
Yeah.
the natural state of human beings is not to wear masks. This
Yeah.
is not a natural way that things happen. This is a circumstantial thing, which will hopefully be completely gone in the next, few months. But
Yeah. The weirdest part about this whole thing was like, I remember when it was just barely starting to happen in China. And like, I remember reading like a news article, like it wasn't even a news article. It was like a tweet or something. I was like, oh yeah, there's this like weird coronavirus thing in China. Huh. Interesting. Okay. And then like a week later of like, oh, this Wuhan thing, man, boy, they're kind of struggling with it. Huh. Okay. This was in like January, but like, and then have it explode like that. And just like within like
Yeah.
a matter of, it was literally like a week in March that it was like, we were going to school and then all of a sudden the president came out and said, hey, we're like, did like the whole travel ban between all the countries, everywhere just like locked down. And it was like, what the heck just happened? 0 to 100 real quick, man.
I'm worried about how well we'll readjust to not having all sorts of weird restrictions. The European Union has been in talks for the last couple of weeks, especially. They're already in talks of having some sort of biological passport, to the point where if you don't have either a recent negative test or a vaccination medically reported on your passport, they won't let you in their country.
Yeah.
That worries me a lot.
Why is that-
I think setting that precedence.
Why does that
for-
worry you?
Well, because as soon as you start opening the doors behind, we only let people with certain biological conditions enter our country, you open the door to any number of biological restrictions.
Yeah, but what I would say to that though is like, there have been countries where you can't travel to countries unless you have certain vaccinations though. Like we've done that before, right?
yeah, like with yellow fever.
Yeah, with like serious illnesses, like polio. That's what I'm saying. I mean, all I'm saying is it starts setting a much more widespread precedence for something that could turn into much more than we want to protect against coronavirus type thing.
Yeah, but
I can see that. I think that coronavirus would still be classified as a serious illness in the sense of like the damage that it does. And you look at, I mean, comparatively, I don't believe that, at least in recent years, that yellow fever or polio have done anything near as much damage as COVID has. So I think that COVID doesn't have the appearance of being as serious as it is. And I mean, I realize more and more how serious it is talking to people who have lost loved ones, and how it kind of is a little close to home in terms of like, yeah, like the neighbor down the street like died from COVID. But I do agree in the sense that it's not the kind of like it's pretty much endemic to everywhere. Like there's not really any country on earth that doesn't have COVID at this point. So it doesn't always make sense to me to restrict travel so much, because I feel like, I mean, my family's trying to go to Canada and the border's closed. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because from my point of view, I've been probably wrong in this. Canada, it doesn't seem like we have some kind of different COVID that's going to be more dangerous to them or vice versa. It just seems like an endemic disease that is pretty much everywhere in society at this point, which is dangerous, but it's just not something that I see as spreading. Am I wrong in saying that?
no, I think I agree with you.
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Like my position is like, I'm like, there's a lot of controversy, especially among like kind of the right wing of politics, about like the whole COVID passport. That actually like doesn't really bother me. I'm like, you're your own country. Like if you want to have a COVID passport, like do a COVID passport. What does make me nervous, and I don't think this is really going to happen, but I did see like a video on CNN that was they were talking about tying reopening to getting vaccinated and tying freedoms. It was like this crazy interview. I don't know who this lady was, but it was like this total like authoritarian type of approach where it's like, hey, we're going to restrict your freedoms until you get vaccinated. And basically she was saying like the government has like this window of opportunity where you can tie vaccinations to giving people freedoms again. And I was watching that video. I was like, goodness gracious, how about we have freedoms because it's in the Constitution? Like,
It's exactly what the
inherent
UK
to
has
being
been
a human
proposing.
being.
oh,
It's
brother.
exactly what the UK has been proposing.
Yeah, I just think it's
Especially with their
ridiculous.
extensive lockdowns. They say, you have a vaccination, okay, you can go out in public. You don't have a vaccination, you're set at a curfew and you can't go outside or we'll arrest you.
Yeah,
That's
I think,
exactly what they've been talking about. And that's why the whole conversation worries me.
yeah, I
That's
think
the precedence that worries me the most.
I think Europeans and Australians, like, I think Australia's kind of the same way too. I just think that it's just like blown out of proportion over there. Well, I was actually talking to, I think it was, I was having a conversation with like my mom or someone, and it was like about like the people in California and how like COVID is basically like, I mean, they're like lockdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how masks everywhere, you like can't go anywhere, like no businesses are open, you know? And it was interesting to hear because like in Idaho, you know, I have a lot of family in Idaho. It's like, I mean, we're pretty relaxed about it, you know, like you walk into Walmart, nobody's really wearing their masks, you know, nobody's freaked out about it and they're fine, you know, like they had COVID and they were fine. But I think people from like California, like I was hearing like some of my relatives tell us about some of their relatives who came from California visiting to Idaho, and they were like, man, we need to wear our masks in Walmart. Kind of the guy was like, no, I think you'll be fine. Like, we're pretty relaxed here, which I don't know. Like, some people might get like really triggered about like, oh, you're not wearing your mask, you know, but it's like, I don't know. Like, if that's the culture, like freedom's freedom, man, you know, that's the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I've shared before my thoughts. Like, I see COVID as a risk, like many risks. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
I think that there is a danger in putting one risk at the forefront of all other risks when you consider that all risks have some sort of problem that can come from them. But that doesn't mean that one needs to take such precedence. I mean, I understand earlier on taking drastic measures to shut down a whole country because it's not really here yet. And so you can actually have a chance of stemming the flow of coronavirus into a country, or you can, prepare hospitals. And that makes more sense to me. It makes less sense when a threat is just here. And, masking up is not going to stop the virus from existing. It's not going to stop it from entering communities. It's just going to prevent the spread as quickly as it will spread otherwise. It's going to slow the spread, but it's not going to really, that's my understanding. And I might be incorrect. And I fully believe and agree that masks do save lives. But I think that it's similar to like a speeding law. You have to look at the deaths, and you have to look at the risk, and you have to look at all these things, and you have to take appropriate measures to stop them from happening. But I mean, we also drive cars on the highway, and we sometimes go over the speed limit, which you shouldn't do. But it's a risk that people assume so that we can survive. And we're okay with traffic because we know that even though there will be problems, there will be death from it, we have prioritized the infrastructure over it. Now, COVID's different because a lot more people have died from COVID than traffic accidents. And it's a bigger deal. But at the same time, I think it should be prioritized in the same kind of vein as just a risk in association with other risks.
Yeah, you have to view it like from a risk. You have to measure the amount of risk associated with it. And
your actions should be proportionate to that risk to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that seems like the most proportionate thing to do.
And I only bring this up because I feel like sometimes people become so narrow-minded focused on COVID. We have to stop it. And it's like, well, there's a lot of other risks in life now that the government could stop more, but we don't. We could stop all crime from happening, which also takes lives. But I just think it should be factored in as a policy decision, not as the policy decision.
Yes.
That's at least, especially now that we're a year into it and it's not really going away. It's just kind of here. I guess vaccines are changing that, but that's kind of how I've felt.
So that's my new favorite argument now, is because you're hearing like, oh, like everybody get vaccinated. But then you hear like, well, at least I am. Like I'm hearing like all these health officials like, oh, like still wear your mask and we're still going to have to socially distance for like the next year. I'm like, what in tarnation is the whole point of getting vaccinated if we're just going to do the same thing for the next year? Like, once I get vaccinated, I am vaccinated, by the way. Well, I'm 50% done. I have the next one coming up here in a few weeks. But I'm like once I'm vaccinated, like that's the finish line we've been trying to get to here. Should that have been the finish line? I don't know, but it's what we've been aiming for the last few months. And now that we're here, for them to just keep saying like, oh yeah, keep wearing your masks and socially distancing, I'm like, no, like that's the whole point of doing the vaccine and doing like all this stuff, is to get away from that. And so that's been my favorite, is seeing everyone like, oh, so got to do that. I'm like, that was the whole point of the vaccine,
Mm-hmm. We've mentioned before on the podcast where, especially as a Western culture, we focus so much on measuring things. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a ridiculously overwhelming urge to fixate on a specific statistic, when the vast majority of people don't understand what a statistic actually means. They think if you have a number, it means you must have truth, which is about as far from the truth as you could possibly get, in my opinion. So I think, to me, that's one of the most difficult things, is everyone likes to look at a case graph, which is not the most important metric by any means at all. But that's what everyone is focused on, and no matter what happens to cases, that's what they want to drag down at the cost of anything else, because that's what you get fixated on. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, see, your right to a healthy life is my responsibility. That's by definition what a right is, because as a fellow citizen of a country, I need to uphold certain laws which are put in place to protect your right. Mm-hmm. That makes it my responsibility.
Yep.
And
you can't just walk up to someone and punch them. Like,
that's because that's battery assault. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you deserved it.
I don't know. I probably
He looked at me funny, people. I swear, you didn't see the look in his eye. He was ready to pounce on me at any minute. But see, that's what I'm getting at. And to me, I think we've overstepped that estimation for the vast duration of the pandemic itself. Obviously, when you've got hospital beds that are being filled up at an alarming rate, that is a public health hazard. Because if I go out and get a car crash and break my arm, and I can't get into the ER because people are filling it up with, COVID cases, that is a very real, very bad problem. And people should be taking pretty widespread action to mitigate against that. That's something we should be doing as a society. But when we're not in that type of situation, first of all, trying to make sure that type of situation isn't the case should have been one of our primary focuses, not keeping everyone at home so they can't do what they need to do. Maybe your right to a healthy avoidance of COVID doesn't outweigh my right to earn a living for the rest of my family.
Yeah.
That's a discussion I don't think we had nearly enough of. And it's because it's a Mexican standoff at the institutional level. No matter what happens, the first person to lower his gun gets blamed for no matter what happens next.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it is.
First person to let off COVID restrictions.
That's exactly it. Because
as soon as there's one case, they're going to be the scapegoat. They're going to be...
Yep. If cases go up, it's your fault because you're not doing what you should be doing.
Yep.
If cases go down, you still are blamed because we could be doing so much better if these guys were doing the thing.
Yeah.
You can't be the first one to lower your guard, which is what happens at the federal level, at the state level, at the university level. Mm-hmm. The universities are crackheads about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we're not even we're at a pretty laid back university.
Exactly. We're not even in one of the worst ones.
Yeah.
But we know people who live on campus and have been fined by the university because they have people in their apartment without a mask on.
Oh, brother.
Officers will walk around and peek inside your window. And if they see someone who does not live at the apartment without a mask on, it is a $100 fine per person per incident.
That's ridiculous. I actually didn't know that.
It's bad.
Oh, that's terrible.
And I might be misquoting the number, of course, but if memory serves, that's the figure.
Even
which is
the fact that that's
incredible.
Even happening, man. Like, if I want to invite someone into my house, I'm going to invite someone into my house.
And that's
my right
the discussion that no one's willing to have because you get shot down for wanting to kill grandma.
Yeah, exactly.
When people don't know how to have a nuanced conversation between certain types of people who have a disproportionate exposure to the virus and could die from it at an alarming rate
Yeah.
versus students such as our age who really don't have much of anything to worry about. I'm not saying there
Yeah.
aren't risks involved, especially because it's a novel virus and we didn't understand a lot of it at first. So like there were an incredible amount of unknowns up front,
Yeah.
which is a huge problem. But like time goes on, so much changes, and we have a vastly different understanding about the virus itself. So now all of a sudden, why aren't we changing policies as our knowledge changes?
Yeah.
Because it hasn't. We've been relying on the same hammer to fix the screw instead of the nail, which is what we're doing. Which
Yeah.
brings me back to just my original point of your right is my responsibility. And now we have the ultimate decision for you to get a vaccination. As soon as that choice is in front of you, you take the responsibility for your right to a healthy life out of my hands and into yours, because it is your responsibility to choose a vaccine or to not.
Yep.
And the instance you have that choice, your right to a healthy life is no longer my responsibility. That's the end result, in my opinion. This is
Well
the
said.
finish line.
Well said. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's like one of those things that, because even like the whole university thing too is just such a joke sometimes, you know. And actually, okay, you know what? I'm gonna say this first. I actually applaud Utah State for the way they have handled COVID, because I think they handled it the best they possibly could, being a state institution. Like, they were reasonable where they had the in-person classes, all the faculty and staff, they worked phenomenally to have in-person classes and to make it socially distanced and safe for all the students to get as good of an educational experience as they could. So hats off to them. I think they did the best they possibly could given the government restrictions that they had on their shoulders. That being said, there's still a lot of stuff that they did that I really disagree with, like the getting fined for having somebody in your apartment that's not wearing a mask. I think that's ridiculous. And then another thing that I heard, one of my good friends, he actually got I think he got exposed to COVID. He was around somebody in one of his classes that had COVID, and he got quarantined. Well, quarantined because he lives in university housing. They take you out of your house, like out of your apartment that you're paying for, right? And they put you in a quarantine apartment for you to quarantine in until you test negative. This actually happened, and I could not believe
What do
what I
you
was hearing.
mean?
I've told you guys about
Wait,
this.
no, you have. I just remembered this story that you've told us. What the heck?
Yeah.
That is so beyond the line. I can't even comprehend.
I was appalled, quite frankly, that they did this. I was like, okay, so here's the deal. Okay, I get it. If you sign a thing with the university that says, hey, like, you signed your lease or whatever, your papers to live with.
That's part of the lease.
That's part of the deal, you know? But, like, still, man, I feel like that's a major invasion of, like, every freedom you got of, like, okay, you need to be quarantined. We're going to take you out of where you're living right now. And never mind that you have all of this schoolwork and you have work and stuff anyway on top of all this. We're going to make you move out of your apartment. And heck, at that time, by the time you figure that out, you probably already infected your roommate, so it's not even going to do anything, right? If you have it. And we're going to move you out into this quarantine complex. So let's say you don't have it. Now you're in this quarantine complex with a bunch of people that do have it. And, like, it's just ridiculous to me. I'm like, this is insane, especially considering that the people going to school are young people that have like a 99.9999999% survival rate, unless you have some crazy condition that makes you really vulnerable to the coronavirus, in which case, if you do, you should not be here at a university with a bunch of people that could be spreading COVID. It's just ridiculous to me.
It's your responsibility to take care of your health and do what is necessary to protect yourself.
Yeah.
When you're in that type of situation, the response needs to be proportional to the risk. That is an exponentially beyond the line. I am flabbergasted that they could even legally do that.
Yeah.
Let alone enforce it. That's appalling.
I was literally I could not believe it. I had to ask him like for specifics about the situation that happened to him because I could not believe that that's actually what they did. But after hearing it, I was like, oh my gosh, they literally like made you move out of your apartment for 2 weeks. That's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
And for me, that sounds to be more of a PR move than anything else. I mean, because a lot of those restrictions seem to be one of those that look good on paper. I mean, I want to agree with you, Kaden, when you say that I'm really generally pleased with the university's response to COVID. They've tried to have a lot of activities for students to keep us involved. Mm-hmm. A lot of just great teachers or professors that I've had have made a great effort to involve us even over online classes. That being said, I don't really fully understand how a university can be so strict on these measures and can have almost everything shut down to in-person classes, can have this whole system, and yet will still allow and encourage people to move in to in-person living centers. I mean, when I was first moving in, and this was in August when COVID was a much more prevalent kind of threat, when we didn't have the vaccine, a lot more unknowns. I was getting a lot of mixed messages personally, and I wasn't really sure what to do because here I was being invited to come live on campus. It's great. And at the same time, all my classes are being shut down. And I'm, having to
because they need revenue.
That's exactly it.
Because they need revenue. And so for me, that kind of showed, and I don't know all the situation and the system of how things were for the university and everything, but it was just major mixed messages. I mean, what do you expect college kids to do? You get a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds and you put them in very tight, close together living situations where they live hundreds and hundreds of people on the same little block and in these tiny, living like sardines basically, which is pretty much what student housing is.
Yeah. And
then you expect them not to socialize, not to make friends, and not to travel. And so, I mean, I see these things that just they don't really seem to make very much sense. It seems like on the back end, you need to have revenue from housing, which I get it. The university is made that's how it has to be. But now as a student, I'm here, but initially at least, it seemed I was expected to be wearing my mask at all times and don't really interact with other students, even though I'm living very close to them and I'm 23 years old. That's what I'm wired to do.
Yeah.
No matter the ludicrousy of the expectation, have either of you heard of a single person who hasn't struggled to complete their classwork more because of everything being online and not being able to see people in person? I do not know a single human being who can say that, oh yeah, I love online classes because No, they'd have to be the most introverted person I can possibly think of.
Yeah.
It's infinitely harder to complete your classwork because of just doing everything online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, and
now,
I think...
Now, to be fair, I'm going to make a quick point to that.
It's convenient.
There actually are aspects of that are really convenient. So,
of course.
Whenever I meet with groups, I cannot tell you how nice it is just to send off a Zoom link and have that be normalized, that you can just meet over Zoom really quick for 15 minutes instead of, all right, got to trek on campus and check out a room at the library and go meet with these guys. You turn an hour and a half endeavor into a quick 15 minutes. So there are pros that I hope carry on into the future.
Oh, yeah, there's little solutions like that. But
overall, though,
yeah,
I agree
that's
with you.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and to your point, Nick, I definitely like a lot of the schedule openness of having online classes, but it just takes away from the structure, and it's so hard to learn something when you can't look at the professor and just kind of ask questions in a non-committal kind of sense. I don't have to go to office hours. I don't have to send off an email. I can just kind of oh, this doesn't really quite make sense to me. And sometimes things are over Zoom, but I don't even have any Zoom classes. Most of my classes seemed to indicate they would be in person, and then things changed. And that is, of course, the professor's prerogative. If they want to and if they don't feel safe, I think they should have the right to teach online. But for me, it's been very difficult because I have to arbitrarily remember all 6 of my classes because there's not really a schedule. And so I just have to remember which class I have when. And, I haven't watched a lecture video from that class for 4 weeks. And so let me just watch all of them right now. And then, I might learn enough to pass the test, but I don't have nearly the understanding I would have in a in a dynamic and group-centered setting.
Yeah.
Now, and I've had professors that have taught classes that are almost, in some cases, are as effective as in person because they use the tools of Zoom. But I think that overall, it is so much harder. And the mental health aspect is also a lot more difficult. I mean, I went to class yesterday. I had group meetings, all these things, but I never left my apartment. I didn't even walk outside yesterday because I was so busy.
Yeah.
And it just wore on me. My psyche was just frayed afterwards.
Yeah.
It does. It does that to me too. I really struggle with it. I don't like not being able to have peripheral interactions with professors and other people. That's what I miss the most. I remember John Ferguson's law class where most of our work was with a group where, we'd have conversations, in between class stuff. As we go out to do our group projects, we get to chit chat, explore stuff. Hey, how's it going? You get to do all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. When you do it over Zoom, you have a very structured log into the Zoom meeting, watch the professor do the thing. You can't single out another student and talk to them. You can't single out the professor unless you want to go to his office hours, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just so much more of a
there's not
closed thing like we do at work. You know? I can't lean across the cubicle and go and say, hey, Kaden, have you ever seen this before?
Yeah.
I have to call you up over Zoom and specifically request a certain thing. It's just you lose all of that peripheral stuff.
Yeah, it's the natural conversations that happen. That you don't realize how valuable they are until you're forced to do everything online. You're like, oh, man, I really like those.
Well, a year ago, I would have called me a pansy for not being able to do schoolwork and stuff like that. I would have heard someone complain about it and be like, yeah, I get it, but just get your work done. Easy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, a year later, no, I'm going, hey man, dude. It's an entirely different ball game. Yeah. We're not even talking about the same type of education here.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said, at least for me. Like if I take the time and make the effort to go to a physical location for the purpose of learning something, I'm going to just pay way more attention that way than if I'm in my house where I normally am, eating Cheerios, making breakfast, scrolling through my phone, doing all this stuff. I'm and then, I have a class I have to go to. It's just the whole mental aspect is just it's so much nice. Well, that's why people go to work and stuff. That's why people have offices is because, then you can concentrate on what you're doing and you're around people that are doing similar things to you, And so I think it's just crazy. Now, my favorite is going to be how all these colleges and universities, they've managed to justify tuition payments for this half-assed learning that we're doing right now, half-assed education, right? And I'm just fascinated by the fact that now we are going to pivot back eventually, right, to normal in-person classes. And how in the span, I think it was a tweet by someone, in the span of 2 years, these universities will have had to make the argument that online education is just as good as a real as a in-person education. And then immediately pivot back to but you should come back and do it in person because in person's better, but still charge the same for all of it. I think that's just hilarious.
Yep. That's going to be, cat's out of the bag on that one, dude.
Yeah.
That is an interesting pivot. And I think to put it definitively, I was having this thought as we were talking a little bit earlier about what exactly it is that makes an in-person class so just special. And I was thinking about my first classes that I took in my first semester, which was really the only full semester I think I had before COVID hit. I had a full semester prior to that, but that was before my mission. So after my mission, this was the only full semester that I believe I had.
Oh, okay.
Until COVID hit. And my two favorite classes, and Jeannie Johnson, that was she was teaching an international relations class, and another professor of mine taught a comparative politics class. And especially the international relations class, I was excited to go. Listening to it, it was listening to Jeannie lecture. It was just mesmerizing. She was just so well put together. She knew her stuff, and it was fascinating. And I just developed this passion for it that I felt like I could really talk to you about international relations afterwards. And that lack of a human aspect, I found in all of my other classes. I'm now going on my third semester with in-person or with remote parts of learning, or we're learning remotely. you just lose that. I mean, even I have a great finance professor. He is one of the most dynamic, like genuine people I have ever taken a class from. But the problem is he just has online lectures. So what do? I listen to it at double speed, 2 hours before the homework assignments due. And I just hate myself when I'm doing it. I'm like, why am I doing this? But that lack of a real human interaction does not foster the same passion that a real human interaction with an expert does. And that's what I'm really suffering from. I'm just jumping through hoops right now, and it kind of makes me sad.
I feel you. One thing that I've noticed is that I don't struggle with that sort of thing nearly as much at work, which, of course, that's probably because, I mean, I still learn a ton at work. It's not like that's the definition of what I have to do for a job, is trying to learn about different things so that I can actually solve them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe it's just something to the credit of where I work, but I do feel like companies in general seem to have done a better job of trying to implement plans to mitigate against the whole COVID thing while still staying remarkably productive.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, that's probably the difference between how the university handles things and how private industry handles things.
Yes.
The university is the iron hammer that says, you will do this, or we're going to say you just want to kill grandma.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna villainize you if you don't follow every single policy that we have to the T.
Yeah.
And the difference between that and, somewhere in the private sector is, hey guys, we've been given some guidelines. This kind of sucks and we don't really like it, but like, let's do everything we can to keep everyone as safe as we can until we got, a real solution in place.
Yeah.
In the meantime, here's some tools that we're trying to figure out how to use. Let's stay as productive as we possibly can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That to me is how you inspire confidence in a solution, not becoming an enforcing regime that says you must do this.
Yeah.
It's very much, and I don't know. I just have appreciated that approach as we have a problem, let's find a solution, versus we have a problem, here's the policy, here's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's totally different angles.
It is. It's a completely different angle, but it's the same problem.
Yeah.
And to me, it comes out with two incredibly different results. At school stuff, we've got all of these struggles that we've spent the last little bit enumerating. But at work, obviously, it's still difficult or more difficult to do things in a remote fashion. But we found a lot of ways around it that have just worked incredibly well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? I feel like we still have a really good connection between different people. There's still really good policies for doing things at the office, in person, and whatnot. And when I go around people who are, older or outside my work area, I'm perfectly happy to wear a mask because it's just want to do the right thing and, help out around here.
Yeah.
So perhaps I have a disagreement on principle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's much easier to follow a leader that says, let's solve the solution, let's do it together, and let's just keep working towards something, to the point where we can not do it eventually.
Yeah.
Once we've solved the problem. It's so much easier to follow that than the regime that says this is how it must be done.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Without any type of leniency, without any type of nuance. I don't know. It's something that I haven't fully articulated yet to myself, but it just seems like two very different approaches that come out with one with a pretty decent solution and then one with something that doesn't seem to do a very good job of what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I think the approach is totally, it's kind of the same analogy as we've all had good managers and bad managers we've worked for, right? What does the bad manager do? The bad manager micromanages you, tells you what you should do, bosses you around, very rude, just this is how it is, you're going to do it, right? The good manager is somebody that says, hey, how can I help you out? They're more supportive. They're like, how can I help you out? What goals we want to get done? How can I help you be productive? How can I help you grow as an employee? And I think those approaches, in the end, you pretty much get, the end result, you're aiming for the same end result, but because the approach was different, you get completely different responses from the employee. I think it's very similar to
That's
that.
exactly it. That's a great summary of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think it's because it's private and because it's so much more of a,
Yeah.
we rely on you to be able to, as employees, we rely on you to do the thing, we're all literally doing this together. Do you think that's the distinguishing factor?
I think so. I think it's just the management style. I think that's the distinguishing factor.
Okay.
I think there's probably corporations out there that would operate very similarly to how Utah State did their
That's
stuff.
true.
You know,
That's
I think
true.
it just comes
Okay.
down to management structure and how they approach it.
Yeah.
You know, which I think.
Well, and I think a
was
lot of
something
this
good.
falls in like the political correctness kind of realm, and the one of the hard things about this, and I want to be very clear about everything. Like we have not, I know all of us personally, and myself as well. Like we have not meant to trivialize the suffering that this has brought about. Like I think it's always important to put a plug in. Like COVID really does and has caused a lot of suffering and loss of human life that is terrible and often preventable. And it's important that we are aware of this. But I think that these kind of discussions are important because it doesn't necessarily mean like and disagreeing about policy doesn't necessarily mean that you don't value human life. But it's just a disagreement as to what policies are the correct ones and which approaches are the most, I guess, correct in whatever ways. But to your point of management style, it reminds me of political issues and how people interact. And I think that there has to be a purpose of the thing when you interact. It reminds me of people that have a very strong political opinion on the right or the left, and you'll see often in just social media or other aspects, they will kind of demonize people on the other side to maybe prove their point. To say like you don't care about children or you don't care about older people because you're not wearing a mask.
Yeah,
they
go to extremes and they don't discuss nuance.
The problem is when you take on that kind of an approach of shaming people, and you see this in government or policies as well, of like you must comply with this or that translates to you don't care about people.
Yeah,
that kind of almost forceful look at things doesn't really change people's minds. It entrenches them, and so that's why I think you have such an anti-mask feeling, is because there was at least a sentiment that Big Brother's telling you have to do it. Now, I am a very proud mask wearer. I will wear a mask anytime you tell me to or ask me to. If I think it is completely impractical, I generally will not wear one unless I'm specifically requested to do so. But I really believe these things are important. It's just that when it becomes mandated, you don't change people's minds, you entrench them. And that's my opinion.
I think that's an incredible point to make. That really is a great summary of it. Well, and to what you said earlier about like, what COVID is and that sort of thing, I think that's probably, we have steered clear of that type of conversation. We're not talking about infection rates, death rates. Are the numbers real or wrong? That sort of thing. We've steered entirely clear of that conversation because we know that we're probably not placed well to have that conversation. And it's you're right. It's probably worth pointing out. Just because we're talking about it doesn't mean that we're trying to make factual statements for or against certain things, but we can still perfectly well discuss policies like that.
Yeah.
Under full jurisdiction. I have no reservations about making the comments that I have made because those are coming from a certain perspective under a certain policy, and I'm not trying to use any type of statistic. I'm not trying to talk about, well, the CDC said this, and well, that's not really that. That's not quite true because this other study. We've done a very good job of steering clear of those types of conversations. We're keeping it well within our realm of this is what we are capable of talking about in good faith. So you're right. It's a very good thing to bring up too, and it ties in perfectly with Kaden's point of, hey, management style matters, dude.
Management style matters
because when you have people that are just saying, hey, here's a problem. Here's the solution we're going to come up with. How can I help you out? Let's make this happen together. I can't have enough appreciation for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Especially in contrast to the alternative. So, yeah, I like what you said.
Yeah. 100% agree. 100% agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I'll be interested to see as well is once things open up, I wonder how much everything's going to go back to normal. I think people are still a little bit, I wonder how this will change our culture too. I mean, and this was in regard, like as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we recently had General Conference where prophets and apostles or other leaders of the church speak to the members, and they did this, and this was over the last weekend, over Easter weekend, and they spoke about just general messages of the gospel and whatnot, and there's a specific session for the men of the church where we all gather and we listen to it for 2 hours on Saturday evening. And there's a pretty strong tradition in a lot of Utah. After that particular 2-hour session of listening to church leaders and whatnot, it gets done about 8 o'clock in the afternoon or in the evening. There's a strong kind of cultural tradition of going to eat afterwards. And I'm sure, Kaden, you might have experienced this before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's usually maybe 8:30 at night on Easter weekend, on Saturday, that all of the restaurants in Utah, or many of them, are just filled with church members, male church members that are all standing in line and going to eat, and some people that aren't members of the church that are just blown away at what's happening.
Yeah. Well, what is going on?
And that's been one of my favorite traditions. And you can go to restaurants now. There's no barring you. There's nothing holding anybody back. But I participated in this tradition, and it was the weekend, and I went with some extended family members to Chuckarama, which is our usual place.
Nice.
And no one was there. There was nobody. Yeah. There were no other church men there. It was just us. There were no other, as we would call them, priesthood holders.
Yeah.
We were the only ones.
Really?
So it made me think, I feel like there's aspects of society that might not ever bounce back. Maybe people will just stop going to movies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know about that. It's an interesting conversation of how everything is going to transition back to normal, because in the last year, I don't think I've seen, that's kind of sad. I don't think I've seen a single movie at the movie theater in the last year.
Tenet.
He didn't go with us,
I didn't
though.
You didn't go with
I
us.
know.
Oh,
I know.
no.
That is one of my great regrets in life now, but that's okay. We move on. Kind of. But anyway, I have not seen a single movie in the last year. And partially that was because there aren't any really good movies. Well, except Tenet, which I did go to, which that's kind of my own fault. But I'm very curious to see how the movie industry is going to do from here on out, because now all of these big companies are moving to maybe we should just let them out on streaming services, like I know Disney Plus, they've had a few movies come out, haven't they?
Some garbage ones.
Now there's debate of how good they were, but the point is they've released movies on Disney Plus, because they've released is that how they did? I think they did Mulan that way, didn't they?
My point exactly.
All right.
Sorry, guys.
They did Mulan. I think
I like Disney, I promise.
I think they're gonna do, or maybe they already did, Black Widow. Did that already come out?
No way.
I think that's
No
what
way
they were
we
gonna
missed
do.
that.
Hold on, I
We
think
gotta
that's what their
double-check
plan
that.
is, though. I think they're gonna release
It probably is. Yeah. I have a serious doubt that movie theaters will go away.
I hope they don't.
Box office numbers are the way you regain your cost for making a movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that ticket price, that's your saving grace. You can't get that if you post your thing to a streaming service.
Although, I wouldn't necessarily agree completely, because, Netflix has come out with very, top-notch, high-quality TV shows that I would argue probably cost more to make.
TV shows, but blockbuster films have a much larger budget.
Well, you make what people are willing to pay for. Honest to goodness, I don't see, with the amount of streaming services and accessibility, I really don't see droves of people going to movie theaters as much, because I feel like that's almost phasing out of our culture. It just doesn't feel like something that I am willing right now to pay $10 to go sit in a room with a bunch of other people.
I don't know. I disagree with you there.
Same.
I don't know. I'm
That's a
going to stand by
cultural
my
thing
guns.
that I just
I
have
don't
to
know.
love to do.
So
You know what I mean?
really quick, Disney is planning on releasing to streaming Black Widow and Cruella to debut on Disney Plus at $30 to watch the premiere on May 28th.
Yeah. But no one's going to pay $30 to watch it when you can wait 10 weeks and then watch it on your streaming service anyway.
Yeah.
No one's going to do that.
Well, yeah. I just feel bad for all these movies that were going to come out in 2020 that have just been screwed up. Like this Black Widow movie. Like I was like, how many years has Scarlett Johansson been waiting for Marvel to make this Black Widow movie, right? She's been in like all the Marvel movies. Finally, she gets her own movie for Black Widow, and then 2020 happens and it just screws over the whole thing, right? I'm like, that's kind of a bummer.
It's awful. She's had a great career though.
She's had a great career.
At least it's not.
I don't
at
feel
least it's
that
not
bad
her.
for her,
at
but-
least it's not her breakthrough.
Yeah.
It would be awful if someone like Tom Holland. It's like your first big box movie.
Yeah,
and then
would
that
suck.
happens to you. I would be furious.
I am beyond glad that Endgame came out before COVID.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine what an upsetting thing that would be if it was just a year later and COVID hit and we had to we either had to wait another year for Endgame or we had to do it over streaming services. That
Highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah.
Lose all the hype.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see because I don't know, because we've had all these recent releases. The Star Wars movies. I still remember The Force coming. I mean, not still remember. I mean, I remember The Force Awakens coming out and that changed the world. I remember going to see it 3 times and everyone was just going nuts about it. And almost similarly, I was gone on my mission for a lot of for I think Infinity War and Endgame, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
When those both dropped, and so I wasn't really there for that. But the same kind of madness, from what I understand.
Oh yeah.
Just
dude.
I mean, big deal, big drop. And so I'm just thinking with the Mandalorian and all these other things coming out more on streaming services, and especially Disney Plus having these delayed releases of different episodes. I do wonder if that will take away from the hype of a movie coming out. Maybe people will just be accustomed to I can watch this new series that just dropped, and there's infinite amounts of series, not infinite, but you can spend your entire life watching new TV series on Netflix and Disney Plus. And so it's I don't know if that'll take away from the real hype. If I'll just go watch the new Falcon TV show coming out.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I think some stuff will. I think you're right in the regard that it's easier to do that, and you might see some shift towards it. But I don't think COVID has been nearly strong enough to eliminate a tradition that we have, as far as we like to go places to do things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a certain desire to do that. And I was writing an essay for my music class about this type of thing, where it's just, we've had a long-standing tradition of music hasn't always just been something that you tend to listen to. For the longest time, it was you needed to devote yourself to a concert in order to go listen to live music. And you didn't just plug it into your laptop and, play it while you're studying or something. Half listen to it and you don't really know it, but you listen to it 400 times and then you know it. Music used to be you set aside a day or at least an evening to get all dressed up, maybe go out to dinner, you go to the performance hall, you sit down for 2 hours to watch a live performance of music, and you stay silent and you pay attention. You don't do anything. You go to listen to music.
Yeah.
And that is what you dedicate the evening to do. And that's a tradition that we have for everything else. We go out to eat food. Movies, I think they're the exact same thing. It's
you
an
can still
experience.
do it for music. People still go to concerts.
Oh,
Man.
yeah,
Concerts
people
are
do.
Gigantic.
Because it's an experience.
yeah.
It's not just about watching the thing.
Yeah.
Watching the thing is different when you watch it at home versus a theater.
Yes.
So I don't think, I think movie theaters have the experience on their side.
I think that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
I would anticipate we would see maybe more of a rise in the experience movie theaters rather than just a conventional because that's one of the problems I have with movie theaters sometimes is it's not that they have a bad picture. It's generally really impressive picture, but it's just not as much of a great experience because the guy in front of you is just, you can't see over him or something, or oh man, you got popcorn on the floors and people are kind of just around, and I would see maybe we would have a rise of experience theaters like IMAXs and those sorts of things.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah,
I
because
think you're
that's where
exactly
you're
right
going to
there.
get more of the experience.
Wide screen stuff with curved screens, augmented reality where you have effects within the theaters.
That'd
That's
be
what's coming,
nuts.
Chief. I've been predicting this stuff for 5 years.
All right, you know what?
I kid you not, this is coming.
I no longer think that movie theaters are all the way out. I think the lower end ones are
The
probably
lower
a
end
little bit-
ones are
yeah.
out. Yeah. Yeah. Even like the nice, like I think a lot of theaters are kind of going this way. You guys ever been to like those movie theaters that have like the nice big like recliners and the seats are really comfortable?
Yep.
Yeah, those are. I think those are actually like pretty prevalent. I think just here in Logan, we don't really have them.
We have a couple down at Providence. They have theaters with them.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Yep. Their whole first 2 rows.
Oh, well, that's just like the
In
first
the
2
top.
rows, though.
Well, yeah, they don't convert the entire theater to them.
Yeah.
They do have some of those big ones, like down towards Provo.
Yeah, I've been.
Some of the Larry H. Miller ones. Yeah, some of those boys. Oh boy.
Yeah.
The entire theater is kitted out.
Yeah, those are the ones I've been to, I think. And yeah, you walk in and you're like, man, now this is a nice experience. You know, go watch a nice
I went to
movie.
some down in Phoenix like that, and I liked them because they're in the middle of the mall. And,
Oh, yeah.
You know, I love malls and stuff anyway, just because I love being around the atmosphere of people just doing things.
Yeah.
You know, it's a reason to be somewhere and to do anything, to shop around, sit at a coffee shop, study, do some,
Yeah, it's
do some
just the
work, that sort of
environment.
thing, just to be around. And I love the atmosphere of that sort of thing. But I had one that I frequented quite often, almost every day, really. But on the one side of it was, we had a huge plaza with a fire pit, a waterfall down the one side, a lounge area, coffee shops all around, ice cream on the one side, and then you had a couple of restaurants, and then the movie theater. So you could have a whole day, a whole evening, and the theater was a grander experience than sit down and watch a movie.
Yeah.
So
In this kind of made me like, as we're talking about this is kind of making me think, and this is COVID barring, like this is not related at all to COVID, but the way that we as a society have consumed entertainment is so interesting. Like it has no longer it is no longer a luxury, but it is just kind of expected. And for me, I think of it like music. I am always listening to music, pretty much. Like if I'm at home and I get back from something, or if I'm not actively doing something else, I will always be listening to music. If I'm making food, I don't have enough going on, and so I'll listen to music, and I'll be singing along while I make my food. Well, that's great, but it's so interesting to me to think in terms, like as we're talking about streaming services and how entertainment is now just as a society a pretty just expected part of life. It's not it's not a treat as much as it's just kind of expected. I'm going to be entertained for.
Instead of a treat, it's a drug. No.
Well,
you say that jokingly, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Asterisk, fine print on the bottom.
and I say this in a sense, like, because I returned from a mission. I talk about that a lot about 2 years ago. And anyone that has been on a mission knows that you go through an entertainment drought. You don't really have access to entertainment. Movies you can't really watch movies. You can't really listen to music. And especially living in West Africa, we didn't have as much access to internet that maybe other missionaries would typically. And so, it was really just, you at home with a few books and not a lot of like toys or other things, and you're working hard. And to see the contrast from that to coming back and just always being able to watch any movie or TV show whenever I want, or text anyone I want whenever, and play any games I ever feel like whenever, and listen to any music, it makes me think about how that affects society, given that we just have instant access to entertainment whenever.
Yeah, the instant access to entertainment. I have, and I've discussed this with you guys, I have this weird thing in my head where I'm like, I have to be productive for as much of the day as I possibly can. And if I'm not, then, man, like we failed, I could have been more productive. And so like, I've always had this, like, it's like all of this entertainment and all of this stuff that's out there. It's like, I've almost viewed it as like, it's kind of a hindrance, because it's like, I really like watching Netflix, I really like scrolling through YouTube for a while, or Instagram, you know what I mean? But I think there's actually like I think you can do it where it actually helps you be more productive. Where if you take some time and just like relax, go indulge in entertainment, go watch Netflix or whatever. And I've had this experience before where it's like it almost like relaxes your brain to just like not really think about anything for a little while. Obviously, you have to be a specific personality type for this to work, I think. This is just anecdotal. But I think if you just kind of like relax your brain for a minute, you know, like go watch like a couple Netflix episodes, then go back to what you're working on to be productive. I feel like more productive doing that. And I feel happier too. Like just like, hey, I'm going to blow off an hour and just watch this Netflix series. Then I go back to work and I'm like, I feel refreshed. I'm like, all right, ready to go back to work. Now I think you have to be a certain kind of person to have the discipline to go back to work after that hour's up. But I don't know. I'm wondering your guys' input on that.
I have to agree in some respects and not in others, I guess. Yes, for that particular way, you probably need a specific personality. But I do notice that it's actually a pattern. I do a very similar thing, except for the fact that I can't just switch tasks and then go back to what I was doing. If I'm going to do something, that is what I do until I move on to the next thing. If I'm going to go to work, it doesn't matter if I work for 2 hours or 14.
Yeah.
I'm going to work for that expanse of time. And when I task switch, I move on to the next thing. And I don't typically like to go back to a certain thing. So if I go to work in the morning, I don't like to go to work, maybe go back to do class stuff in the middle of the day, and then go back to work.
Oh, yeah.
I'd rather go to work for 8 hours, go to class for the next 6 hours, and then go do whatever else I was going to do for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I do notice that I need that time to recharge. If I don't give myself that, it's bad.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you get in a deficit of it, and the bigger you make that deficit, the more it drags on your conscience. You know what I mean? Trying to be productive without that can be really, really bad. I was having this conversation with myself earlier today.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you don't, it gets so much harder and harder and harder to keep doing what you have to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me, sometimes it's not, I don't like to mindlessly scroll through stuff. I go through Instagram once a week and I go through Facebook once a month. Is about as much as I go through those platforms. YouTube, I'll watch a couple of videos at night when I'm done doing other stuff, and I'll watch them at, it's either that or a podcast while I'm making food or something.
Yeah.
So like that's my scroll through time, but I need a time where I'm not consuming anything, and I need to set something aside to the point where I'm not expected to produce something.
Yeah.
Those are the two key things that I've noticed for myself over the past little while. I didn't have a specific framework for it until about a few months ago when I started noticing, I think it was over winter break, where we had an extra long, 3-4 weeks or something between semesters. So I was just working full time.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I just enjoyed being at work late at night.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed that. So I'd go to work, and then sometimes I just stay there till 11 o'clock at night because I could.
Yeah.
And because I was making progress on stuff.
Dude, that's
you know what I mean? But I'd get done with my regular day stuff, and then I'd have other times of the day where I wasn't expected to produce for my help desk's work, but I also had the capacity to, I wasn't trying to take in stimulus. You know what I mean? I wasn't watching a video. I wasn't watching a lecture. I just had opportunity meets preparation. So I had the perfect mix of, I don't have to be doing something specific, and I don't have to be learning something specific. I can explore.
Yeah.
And those are the periods that I have to give myself. Sometimes it's a week. I wish I had a week sometimes to not worry about the things I need to do.
Yeah.
But at least a day every week or so. It's you want to get meta with it. There's a reason we have a rest day with, a lot of religious frameworks have that type of thing.
Religion,
And I don't have it for a metaphysical reason, but it's a pattern. And you don't reject the pattern that people have come up with.
Yeah. It's probably there for
easily.
a reason.
It's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And I got to admit, don't ignore it, man.
Yeah.
You're getting up in a deficit, and then it causes problems with being productive when you need to be.
Dude, even the whole concept of, this is kind of an epiphany I've had in the last few weeks. The whole concept of resting. Right. This is kind of weird that we're talking about resting, because everybody's so productive, I follow Gary Vee. For those of you who follow Gary Vee, it's like, boy, like you should be working like 18 hours a day, man, and barely sleeping and like grinding and hustling,
Mm-hmm.
So like kind of got that camp that's like, oh, maximum production, like let's get after it, wake up at 4 a.m. All your rap songs, Spalding, that are like, like I'm hustling all day, every day.
I work hard, so hard. Let me tell you how hard I work.
Yeah, exactly. But like I've kind of had this epiphany that like, so, and you see this with a lot of like programmers or like just people in general, where oftentimes like the best epiphanies you'll have, and I've had this happen when I'm like really delving into like a program I'm writing or an app I'm trying to figure out how to program. It's like I'll just be going and going and going, and it's like, all right, I'm just gonna like take a break for a sec. I'm in the shower and or randomly throughout the day when I'm not focused on that, all of a sudden, boom, oh, I just figured out how I need to debug that line of code or how I could do this, and that has happened so many times. Not when I'm like going crazy trying to make it happen, like oh, how do I make this code work? How do I make this code work? Sitting in front of it for who knows how long. It's when I'm not doing it and I'm just chilling and being present and doing whatever, that it's like that my brain's just like, oh yeah, by the way, here's how you do it, But I think there's something to that, because like you see this, it's the same principle for like, I think the same principle applies for like your brain as it does like building muscle, right? Everybody thinks you build muscle when you work out. That's not actually true. You break down muscle when you work out. It's the day after or the period of time after that your muscles grow back stronger. It's when you're resting that your muscles actually grow. I think the same principle kind of applies to your brain, where it's like, you gotta be productive, you gotta focus, but then when you rest, like just let off the gas and do whatever for a minute, and then you actually end up being more productive. That's been my experience.
See, I like that thought, and I'll come at it with a different angle, because the idea of like you have to allow yourself rest is important, and I've been on different ends of this extreme. Like I'm an easily distracted kind of a person, and I'm also the kind of person that flows like water does. Naturally, I, like pretty much anyone, go with the path of least resistance.
Oh,
and so
hold on, I'll move around.
Also, the lights in where we are just went out, so I'll keep talking, but
You're good. You're good. We'll do a clap session real quick.
Oh yeah,
do that.
We'll get them up. Very nice.
You guys want to?
We haven't had that happen before.
Yeah, we've all been way too still.
Right on.
But in this regard, kind of to what you said, Kaden, I've experienced the opposite end as well. So over the summer, I would consider myself to be very disciplined. I was running some long runs 2 or 3 times a week. And I was working from about 8 to 2 o'clock, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at my first job, and then 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at my second job, and then running after that. And then I would run home and then eat dinner and go to bed and just cycle through that. That was just kind of my life. That's what I did. And it was hard. It was a very full, just, working 10 to up to 12 hours a day. And I felt like it was a lot of discipline, but I kind of like what we're saying. I gave myself a little bit of time to watch Netflix at the end of the day, and it just boosted me up. And sometimes throughout the day, I'd be thinking about, I get to watch Netflix later on, and so it would help me out. But then coming to school, I found the opposite problem and we've talked about the problems with online school. Well, I don't really have a motivation to get up super early, make myself a great breakfast, go on a long run, or work out in the morning, and then be, ready at my laptop, when I can just roll out of bed and just kind of throw in my earbuds and just like, all right, I'm comfortable. I slept as long as I want. And now I'm just going to listen to whatever the lecture is and just kind of do that. And so I've found as well, like if you allow yourself, I just think that discipline is so important. And when you have a situation where you allow your discipline to slip up a lot, it's like a muscle. It atrophies. It leaves you. And so I've found after months or weeks of just not really having discipline until something absolutely must be done, and I have to just go way too hard to study for just 2 hours to just finish something. It's hard for me to just do normal discipline things because I've gone so long where I just roll out of bed when I feel like it. I don't really have a schedule. I go when I want to, and I just make sure I kind of, scrape the bottom and do what's necessary and, keep up my goals. And so as we're talking, yes, rest is important, but I think if you have the expectation of rest whenever you're tired, then your resolve will leave you and you'll be unable to complete normal tasks. And I'm not that bad, but it's something I've seen.
No, I agree with you because I've been in that type of situation as well before. I do find most often recently the problem isn't that I just get undisciplined. My problem recently has been that I have more to do than I feel like I can probably possibly do. There's just more on my backlog and it grows every day and it's just an alarming constant in my life. So I feel the same. I'm typically a pretty disciplined person. I know how to be highly productive, especially when I want to be, like you. The problem is that I'll keep forcing myself to do things and I do it and I do it and I do it. But like I was saying to Kaden earlier, I build up a deficit of I didn't give myself an opportunity to not have to do that. Or I didn't structure in the opportunity to release the gas a little bit and to do that and relax. And when that deficit builds up, suddenly sometimes it just breaks. It breaks me to the point where sometimes you just can't make yourself do things because you know that there's no negotiation for it. You're just forced to do things and to do things and to do things, and you know that there's no reward on the other side, or at least not one at the end of a tunnel that you can see. I mean, obviously in my more recent circumstance, I'm about to graduate, which means I have a lot on my plate trying to finish this thing up.
Yeah.
And it feels like I'm just at the end of a 200-mile marathon, and I'm trying to crawl across the finish line.
You don't want to blow it on this.
You don't want to blow it, and there's so many things to do. But at the same time, I have been plowing myself forward for weeks, and I haven't allotted a time specifically to just not have to do things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I did that back in the fall. I had a week or two where I just was like, all right, I'm caught up. I can let off the brakes for a while. When I get home from work, the first thing that I do doesn't have to be homework. I can go home, and that's when I built my Discord bot.
Oh, sweet.
I built an online program that I use for my Discord server. For those of you who don't know, it's an online platform. It's kind of like social media, but not really. When I say server, it's like a community that you can get an invite to. Something like a splash between Instagram, YouTube, and Reddit.
It's kind of like a Facebook group.
Kind of like that, but it's built to have discussions, and it was built by gamers. It's a very unique type of app, but I've got a server that I own with about 300 people in it. And I needed something automated to be able to manage the dang thing because I've got a crew that helps me out and does that sort of thing. But we had people coming in, a dozen a day coming into the server and that sort of thing. I had a huge need to just do something. And I had a perfect match between opportunity and preparation where I was able to produce something.
Yeah.
And I was on fire for those weeks, dude. I slept 6 hours a day by choice because I went to work, I did a little bit of homework, and then I spent the next 8 hours at night just doing my thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And since then I haven't devoted that time to let myself not I haven't devoted that time to where I don't have stimulus coming in and I don't have an expectation to produce something.
Mm-hmm.
That set aside time to be creative and do things with.
Yeah.
I remember that, now that I talk about it, I remember that specifically. It's a lesson that I didn't learn while I was out on the road. I can't believe I didn't. I just had this realization as I was talking about it, but I had this very same situation while I was out there. We were managing 2 liquidation companies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're down here in Fort Mojave, Arizona. The owner decided to liquidate their company. We got 2 locations, a few 100,000 square feet of retail inventory to get rid of, 10 weeks, and we didn't really know exactly the time frame, but we had, I think, a target of 12 weeks. We ended it in 10. We were early on target and everything, but I went weeks working 7 days a week, didn't take a break, and we'd go work from 9 to, wherever we closed. The first weeks we'd work from 9 to 8. I'd get home, do paperwork for the day, that sort of thing. I just was working my face off. And I remember having a couple of days where I would just stare out the window and just feel absolutely dead inside.
Ooh.
Like, what am I doing? And I remember it got to the point where I was having some like mental breakdowns, dude. I was having problems. And then I had to like take 2 days off to like actually physically, mentally recover in order to keep going.
Man.
So, yeah, you got to give yourself time to rest.
Yeah.
I like the analogy you made with working out. It's the exact same thing, dude.
Yeah.
You've got to have that to recover and go back to the gym to be stronger. Because if you don't, man, it'll end you.
It's so counterintuitive too, because it's like this last little bit. I went back to I'm going down the gym analogy a lot here, but the last little bit I used to work out 4 days a week, just doing strength training type of stuff. But I've backed it down to 3 days a week just because it was a little easier to manage. And I'll tell you what, having an extra rest day in there, I have hit more PRs than I have when I was doing 4 days a week. And it's so weird. Yeah, I don't know why. Like, all of my exercises have gone up. Like, I've felt more fresh. And I think it's the same principle. It's one of those weird things that's like, hey, like, the rest is where the magic happens, you know? Like, and then obviously you got to put in the work to get the results too, but it's a give and take, so.
So I guess the conclusion of this, or the concluding idea of what we've kind of discussed, from what I understand, is there's an importance of balance. You don't want to let yourself become unstructured. And to that point, structure, I think, is extremely important.
Yes.
It's important to have some kind of structure and normalcy in your life, because I think if you just kind of do whatever you want, whenever you want, it will lessen your resolve, and your ability to just accomplish tasks and be happy will be less. But it seems like there's a real balance where resting is important, and it doesn't even matter at what point you are in life. Like, if you are the most busy, powerful man in the world, even the president of the United States needs to take time off and rest, because otherwise he'll not perform his functions well. But at the same time, you need to be at least moving forward. And I think that it's important to be strained. It's important to be pushed beyond your comfort zone, but you shouldn't force yourself outside of your productivity zone.
Yeah, I agree. I also want to ask you, Nick Nelson, how the heck are you so productive? Like, how do you just like go ahead? Okay, here's the problem I'm trying to solve right now, right? Is like, I just feel tired during the day. Maybe I have a caffeine addiction, and it's because I drink so much caffeine and then it all goes out of my system and then I'm really tired. But like, just like what is your approach on all of these? Like, you're doing schoolwork right now. You've got normal work, right? What is your approach to like stay on your game? Or I don't know, maybe you're flying by the seat of your pants. Maybe you're not the best person to ask this.
Well, I think it's both. I like to think that I've become an increasingly self-aware person recently.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems is that I don't document certain things, and I kind of have to discover a process at the same time. I mean, we've all been insanely productive at times in our lives. Sometimes you have to innovate in order to make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
You encounter a new problem, so you have to discover new ways to make that happen. I'm not certain I have a real answer for you, other than at some point, partially it comes down to character or your personality.
Just figuring out like what your best work style is, or your best.
Yes and no. I think one of the big things is that I devote certain times of the day and certain places to certain tasks.
Yeah.
Which is why, I mean, you know that I've been spending a lot more time at the office than I usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I don't like to keep working in my room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some days I've been remoting in to my work computer from home just because I tend to feel guilty about not being there in the mornings.
Yeah.
For reference, right now, I tend to work in the afternoons and into the nights a lot of the times when I do work stuff, because in the mornings is when some of my classes meet, and I personally find that I need to do the most difficult thing first. And the most difficult thing for me to do is not my work because I tend to enjoy my work.
Yeah.
The most difficult thing for me to accomplish is schoolwork. And so for me to focus on that, I need to do it first before my willpower is drained.
Yeah.
I know a lot of bigger players in like the tech industry follow this type of thing. This is where I kind of got this idea too.
Yeah.
Where Mark Zuckerberg wears the same shirt and the same pants every day.
I've been
He's
wondering
got a
why
closet.
you're wearing this. No, just kidding.
Oh, I know Barack Obama had the exact same thing. It's decision fatigue.
Yeah.
He sets up a closet full of stuff and he just picks the next one off the rack. He doesn't have to flick through them to decide which one he's going to wear during the day. It's such a small thing, but when you implement it at a scalable level, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So not having to make those types of decisions on a daily basis is a huge deal. I just know that when I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I need to be doing is the most difficult thing that I can possibly do, which probably means I need to get that damn essay done for English 2010 or something.
Yeah.
Because I freaking hate it, and it is so difficult to force myself to do it. So I do the hardest thing first in the day.
Yeah.
And then I'll go do something that's, something a little bit more pleasurable to do, like work. I can go to work for the afternoon, and I can work late because I tend to enjoy what I'm doing, but I know that after that comes the fun thing that I need to do for the day, which I want to go work out usually.
Yeah.
So wake up, homework. Maybe go get food. Maybe I'm still fasting, so I'll go to work. And then I'll go to work until 7 or 8 p.m. Then I'll go to the gym. That's my fun time.
Yeah.
And then when I get home, depends on how disciplined I truly am. Sometimes I'm on my game, which means when I get home, I'm coding, I'm doing more homework, da-da-da-da-da. Some days, I'm gaming with the boys.
Yeah.
Because I need that cathartic release of Call of Duty death comps.
We all have those days.
We all have
Nick.
those days.
We all have those
Sometimes you
days.
need that.
So it depends on how disciplined I truly am. But
Got it.
yeah, like all last week, I didn't play video games for a week. It's just because I was disciplined and I had a good week.
Yeah.
Because I was able to force myself to do the hard things, and then when I got to work, I had fun things to focus on too.
Yeah.
And like my licensing project is something that I still continue to make progress on, albeit slowly, in recent months, just because of everything else I'm doing. But Saturday I was there working on power automation apps.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy my work and I can do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. At the moment, I'm verbally exploring my reasons while I'm trying to explain it to you.
No, that's good.
I'm sure that's visible to you. But
There are some gold nuggets in what you said there, though. I like the because I've heard that too. Doing the hardest thing,
The hardest thing first.
the hardest thing first, or at least early on in the day, because I think that willpower fatigue is very real. Like we learned this in my economics class, or at least it's where I first heard of it. Where like you should never buy something on Amazon like late at night for this reason, because it's just like your willpower is just zapped, your body's done, and it's like,
I'll
oh,
get
okay,
it.
like just click the buy button, because you're not really thinking. When you wake up in the morning, it makes sense to do the hardest thing first, because it's like, okay, this is where I have my maximum amount of willpower. I'm recharged. I'm ready. Let's do it and get it over with, and you're able to just discipline yourself into that.
Well,
that's exactly it.
oh yeah, and to your point, like that reminds me of the idea. Like for me, if I have a bad morning, I have a bad day. If I have a morning where I like just get up later than usual, and I get up late usually, I go to bed late, I wake up late. That's a bad thing, and I hate it.
Mood.
But it just
I feel you there.
yeah,
Sometimes
and that
you
throws
get
you
that.
off. But if you have a day where it's like you get out of bed, you just kind of roll out, you forgot your class, or you slept through one like class or something that you were planning on doing, and you just start talking to your roommate, and you're just like, oh, let me make some breakfast. That it's going to be a bad day. It just is. I mean, this morning, I actually felt like, okay, you know what? Not the earliest day ever, but I'm ready to go for right now. And then I realized I got to make breakfast. And then I also realized I don't have any milk. And so I was trying to make some pancakes, and kind of like you're saying with decision fatigue, like for me, it was just the process of it's already kind of late in the day, and now I'm putting together pancakes. Now I'm talking to my roommate, and it takes forever to make them. And now I made them, and they don't taste that great, but they're okay. And it just took me a long time. It wasn't a quick thing that I could get out of the way, and then go to my hardest thing, or just get off to work quick so I have time when I come home. It was more of like, oh, okay, now I'm just hanging out, and now I got to wash like 8 or 9 dishes because I used a pan, and then I used a spoon, and then I used a bowl, and I used all these things, and it just kind of builds up. And so in that part, I think I'm going to start taking my mornings a lot more seriously. Maybe I'll plan out the homework I'm going to do in the morning and just get it done, because I can tell you there is no worse feeling than having some super hard programming or essay or some kind of homework that you hate to do like late at night, because your mind just starts to just do terrible things.
I feel that 100%. Do you guys ever get kind of the afternoon crash?
Yes.
Okay.
All the time.
I used to get that until I started working at night. Because when I'm at work, I don't get that. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I noticed last summer sometimes, you'd go to work all day, and it's not necessarily the work that does it. Maybe it's just the fact that we do stuff that's kind of brain stimulating. You know what I mean? It can be fatiguing on the mind.
Yeah.
So by the time you get home, you're just mentally drained.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed sometimes I'd hit that. So I'd get home and then just kind of lay on the bed and be like, I really have a lot of stuff that I want to do. I also feel really trashed right now.
Yeah.
So you would kind of get caught between, well, I don't want to do all my fun stuff, like, half-assing it, feeling like garbage, but I also don't want to like take a rest because I feel guilty about like not doing anything.
Yeah.
So you kind of like just scroll through stuff. You end up spending an hour or two on Instagram, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's how my afternoons used to be, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I really feel bad when I'm spending time like that and not being really productive. But I notice if I'm in the office until 10:30 p.m., I'm productive. It doesn't, it's one of those things where I don't, one of my vehement oppositions to the whole do things online is because it forces you to be in the same room all day. And I don't like to have the headspace mixed up. I cannot focus on doing my work when I'm in my bedroom. It's just not where I work. I don't like to even do my school work in my bedroom, because in my bedroom is where I read. I was having insomnia problems last fall, and I mean insomnia problems. 2 hours of sleep a night for a week or two at a time. I could not sleep. I spent probably $100 on sleep aids that month, trying to force myself to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started separating my deals out into different spaces, I did not do homework at home. I hiked my butt up onto campus. If it was late at night, didn't matter. That's how I know how all of these building schedules are. That's how I know you can be in the engineering building until 1 to 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because the janitors won't kick you out. They will if you're in the TSC, where around 10 o'clock you'll start having people coming around trying to close the building on you.
Oh, man.
I separated my tasks out. I did not do homework from home, period.
Yeah.
If I need to be doing homework, I need to have a headspace where I do that sort of thing. So I'd hike my butt up on campus. If I got home from work late, 11 p.m., I'd be hiking up Old Main to get up into one of these buildings to do homework.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? Or
Do what you got to do,
lately,
man.
sometimes I'm okay with doing homework at work if it's, a similar type of thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm very productive at work. Work is a productive space.
Yeah.
Work is not a place where I sit with my phone and I scroll through stuff, because that's just not what I do. It's not something I have done. It's not something I do there.
Yeah.
It is my dedicated place to be productive. So sometimes lately I'll do a lot more homework there because I can still remain productive.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That is so interesting, though.
Yeah.
That your environment would affect you that
It
much.
does. Don't be home at 5 p.m. For the love of everything good on this earth, don't let yourself be home at the point where you know you're going to be weakest. So I love doing my homework earlier, because when I go to work, it means I can stay late.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, I wasn't there at 9 a.m. I can stay until 11 or 12 if I want to, because, I wasn't there all morning.
Yeah.
So if I'm in the office during my most vulnerable hours, 5, 6 p.m., when I'm going to be most tired, I get that extra kick in the afternoon. Maybe I have a little bit of food then, to give myself a little break, but then I'm just productive for the rest of the night.
Yeah. That's where I wish, so I've been coming into the office, this because I've seen you there, later the last few days just to get some more hours in. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but working later there is just a more productive feel of just like being in the office later at night. Everybody's gone. And it's just like you just enter this like other gear that you didn't know you had, or you're like, man, like just flying through all this stuff. Like, you know, I got all the emails sent I need to. I got all this, these queries done that I needed to get done. Like for whatever reason, like after everyone leaves, it's like, okay, of course now is the time I'm actually productive. During the day,
it's ironic.
During the day, like especially in the afternoons kill me because it's like after about lunchtime, it's just bleh. Like can't concentrate, can't like do anything. You just got to force yourself to kind of stay awake almost. You're like, man, and then 5 o'clock rolls by and you're just like so ready to be done. So, of course, like I go home, I'm out of there. But then like those few nights that I've come back, because I would go home like at 5 and then usually like go eat dinner or something or go like work out or something. But then I'd come back around like 7 or 8-ish and work for another hour or two. And then it's like, man, just feel so much more productive this late at night. Like what the heck is going on? So I don't know the answer to that, because you'd fundamentally have to change the whole 9 to 5 scheduling of the entire company, or not the entire company, but people are relying on you to be there in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. But it's just like weird that at that frame of time, at least for me, that frame of time is just super productive.
It seems like a lot of it is about being purposeful in what you do as well, in the sense that when you have tasks to do, like you have to like plan it out rather than just letting them incidentally happen to you.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel a lot about homework, is sometimes like I don't really plan out when I need to do my homework. I just do it when it has to be done. And then all of a sudden I find myself at extremely inconvenient times where it's like, wow, I really have no motivation to do this, but I got to do it. And it's so much better if you're, I guess, purposeful about it. Like if I will focus better in the mornings and this is the hardest thing I have to do, therefore I must do it here. What a lot of this comes down to for me, and like looking at it, is just like proper planning out. Yeah. Like if you can take an hour or so every week and you can just sit down, piece of paper, schedule, write down, here's what I struggled with and here's what I did well and here's what I'm going to try to do and here's what I really have to accomplish this week, here's what I'd like to accomplish, and then even do long-term goals. Here's the kind of person I want to be in the next few months. How am I going to become like that? I have a lot of discipline. It's hard for me to discipline myself into getting to that point, but I really feel like in terms of being productive, it takes a very deliberate level of planning, at which point you can kind of lock into that gear and open up your true potential in those ways. And then you can say, I got to be on campus. And you know what? You can be there regardless of your schedule or like because of your schedule and because you plan, this is when I'm going to go on campus. Because otherwise, sometimes I find myself at home because, oh, crap, I didn't get food that I need. So I need to eat food or else I won't be able to study. But that means I'm home or something like that kind of pops up.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. I think most people probably need that a lot more. I used to keep a very dedicated schedule. I have notebooks full of different ways to make schedules for the next day.
That is epic.
Keeping track of, okay, here's the different little carts of different categories of what I have to do. Here's the specific things that I need to do. The priority levels, I'd prioritize them before I went through it. I have notebooks full of those.
That is epic.
And I hated it.
Didn't work for you?
Well, I think it did sometimes. But like I was telling you last episode, I tend to be a very creative person.
Yes.
Which means that if I feel in a prison of a schedule, it can just be a death sentence to what I need to do. So That's why I converted to do the most difficult thing first. And I think there's a book out there. Ty Lopez probably had it in his 67 steps. I think this is where I adapted it from.
Okay.
And I think the book was The One Big Thing. That seems like the right title. I think it's The One Big Thing. But I don't think I even read most of the book. I got the big gist of it and was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the whole thing was, I don't like to just plan out, here's when I'm going to go here, here's when I'm going to go here. I like being flexible about it. Mm-hmm. But as long as the next thing I'm about to do is the most important thing on the next to-do list.
Yeah.
So if I do that, it tends to be the same thing anyway, where I need
There
to
you
go to
go.
work. That is a high priority item. It gets done because it's a high priority item, not
Yeah.
because I scheduled it at a certain time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Most people probably benefit most from a schedule, though, from a
Yeah.
very structured thing.
Well,
I think that's probably the method for most people.
I think it doesn't even have to be a schedule. I think it has to be a plan.
I think, yeah. I
Because
think
if
Yeah,
you-
that's true.
bulleted
That's
list,
true.
yeah.
Good distinction.
Yeah,
Good distinction.
if you look and like what you have to do is you have to take time to reflect, purposefully reflect, and say, here's like what's going right and here's what's going wrong. Here's what works for me and here's what doesn't. And if you're too freeform about it, then you're going to be like, well, crap, I got this assignment in the future. I have to plan for that. If I don't plan for it, it takes 2 weeks to do, and I'm going to be screwed. And so I got to schedule that in somehow, or I got a team that I got to meet and do things with. And then there's other things where it's like, look, I just hate schedules, or I really am not going to have the discipline to like to wake up at 5 a.m. to do this. So how am I going to work around it? All I think is that letting life just happen to you is where the issues come. And I'm as guilty of this as anybody else. But proactively taking a look at your strengths and weaknesses and the main accomplishment points for the week is what, or for the time in front of you, is what's important. And that way you can actually overcome your weaknesses and play to your strengths rather than playing to circumstance.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Wonderfully said. I think that's a good note to end on.
I think so. Cool.
There you go.